The last video I did, I was talking about being scared and the idea of experimenting with the fear. I was climbing yesterday, and the last video that I did, I spoke about the fear. And essentially, I guess the fear of the unknown, because when I was climbing yesterday, after the session, I believe that to be true more so now than before. The idea of not knowing my next move, that is. So the more that I was climbing, the more comfortable I became. Now, I didn't lose any fear per se. Like, I wasn't necessarily less scared, but I wasn't paralyzed by the fear. So I was able to sort of work with it and work around it, if you will, which is an interesting sort of dynamic. But it's kind of like, so there's that climber. I believe it's Alex Hannon. I keep wanting to say Mark, but I believe it's Alex. And if it's not Alex, I apologize, because somebody does what he does, you should get his name right. So this insane mofo is like climbing the sides of like mountain. I've heard like Yosemite and, you know, different landmarks in the United States and actually around the world. And I remember there was a scene in Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise's rock climbing, and then the camera pulls out and essentially it gives reference to like where he has climbed and where he still needs to climb. And he was basically a speck on a board. Now, you look at that and you're like, okay, Mission Impossible, whatever the case is, yada yada. But now that I think about it, they would have had to have referenced something. And it would have had to have been somebody like Alex Hannon. I keep using the name and I hope I get it right, because if I'm using it throughout this whole thing and I'm getting it wrong, it would have to have been somebody like him that they referenced. Because I remember there was a guy a long time ago and he was climbing the sides of buildings and unfortunately happened to, I believe he fell to his death like while he was climbing, if I'm not mistaken. So people have been doing, you know what I mean, like insane things for a while. Anyways, the point of the Mission Impossible, this dude actually climbs like this with no gear, no harness. So basically he doesn't do the top rope. Safety, other than his, you know, planning the route, his mental toughness, his actual ability. But I remember watching one of his videos, and if I remember correctly, he said there was only one time that he was either, I think, afraid or had second thoughts. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it just wasn't a good moment. And this is on the side of a cliff or a mountain. So mental toughness it would take to shake yourself out of that. So this is why, and maybe I should have thought of this when I left the last session before yesterday, and just calm myself down and just figure out how to get back up. Because if this guy can put himself in the right headspace, like, can you imagine that conversation? Like, like I'm seriously trying to, like, how long was that contemplation for? Like, how long was he going back and forth with himself? And like, what is there really to go back and forth about? Like, there's no, it's not like you have option A and option B. So I think of people like that. I think of those circumstances, and that's, I guess, what makes me want to sort of overcome. Anyways, the session that I had yesterday was a lot better, and I'm not sure if this, like, how could it be a bad thing? But every session that I go, my obsession for it grows. Now, it's weird because I'm finding that I'm getting more comfortable on the wall. Now, as far as and there's a couple of, I guess, problems that I did get to the top of, but I'm still having a problem with that green monster. Now, it seems like anything green at that place is just mollywopping me. But if I employ a technique, which I'm going to try and structure like workouts when I go to sort of work on a technique the first half of the session, and then sort of see if I can just climb and implement said technique. So the green monster here, if I'm right and I actually can figure this out in the positioning of my body, I'm thinking I can employ a drop knee here to get to this last spot. Because for some reason, like, I've seen people do it and shift their weight and just sort of reach for it. And I'll give that another couple of shots, and then I'm gonna go to the drop knee and see what happens. So the session went a lot better, and I left just in a very different headspace, which was good, and which I had hoped for, obviously. So now I want to see what will happen if I sort of structure it, the climbing. Because I believe that, I mean, regardless of whatever it is, it needs some sort of structure, but then, you know, just kind of let loose and just have fun with what you've learned. So we'll see how that goes, and I'm climbing tomorrow. So I'm back on the rock. So here's another thing. I think this is part of the overall thing. Like, if I were to sum it up quick, like, obviously it's fun, but climbing is very humbling at this point in time for me because it exposes my physical weaknesses. So there's certain things that I have no choice now but to work on, because if I'm going to continue climbing, I have to bulletproof my body, like, completely. So my hips are fine. I don't have any problem with flexibility, mobility, and strength in my hips. I just have to make sure that my shoulders are not going to be compromised. So I got to make sure to put in extra time with with my rotator cuff. Now, I've had some tenderness in my elbows, and I am attributing that to gorilla climbing. So that's another thing that I need to focus on, but that's just going to be in every session. It doesn't matter what I do, and to focus on my feet. This is another thing too. For some reason, I detach my upper body from my lower body when I'm climbing. Everything else, I like when I skate, so I have to make sure I at least start to have everything work in concert when I'm climbing. I had a pretty long session yesterday, so I surprisingly feel pretty good, considering how long I went. And this is another reason why I want to improve my technique as fast as I can, so I can climb more, because if I'm more efficient, I can climb longer and like less injuries. So I guess that was my latest experience, which was far. I guess it was enjoyable. It's not like I didn't have, you know what I mean, like a lot of failures. And again, so part of the fear factor with like being competent. More importantly, what I think above and beyond all of that was getting comfortable falling. So instead of resisting it in any way, shape, or form, and it's become a lot more. You know what? I might even say enjoyable, to be honest. Just kind of just flopping. And here, this is, see, I'm not sure. And this is the thing with me. I'm not even sure why this even entered my head. It's the last time I jumped, it was kind of like I was surprised how high I jumped from and nothing happened. And then a flash went into my head of how high I can jump from before something happens. But then the flash left quickly because it's like, how far am I gonna go to find out? Like, so I'm losing track of the sports here, and I gotta get back. Well, I did get back to climbing. The point is that falling is getting to be more comfortable, which is allowing me to take more risks without the panic mode. So I want to see how tomorrow goes, obviously. And I want to chronicle it as much as I can. I want to see what sort of improvement I've made and just the storyline. So that's all I got to say about this session. Let me think quickly. No, I'm good. So, thanks for listening. I'll see you again.